Wake up, champion. Our city lies in ruin. In its place, monsters and twisted spirits now thrive. I have restored you as best I can. Together, we can stop this madness. Defend yourself.
Hey everybody, this is Corey, and today I want to talk about Until You Fall. Until You Fall is a hack and slash combat game, which pushes you through increasingly more difficult levels to fight enemies and bosses. This is a roguelite style game where you are given a selection of random upgrades at the end of each level, and permanent upgrades are given after you fall. Don't get discouraged if you fail frequently, because that's all part of the game's design. It's called Until You Fall for a reason, and you eventually will. So let's talk about the negative stuff first. As soon as I played this game, I noticed that the high frequency audio is a bit too bright, and this nearly caused my ears to bleed because of how piercing the sounds were. Now that's just me, and there's obviously many variable factors which go into this one, such as your own hearing capabilities, the speakers you're using, and the volume levels you use as well. It's known that as we age, we all start losing some of our hearing. The higher frequencies get lost first, which are the brighter and more abrasive sounds that most people don't really hear. There's an audio test you can use to see which frequencies you can hear up to. I'll leave a link in the description below if you're curious. The volume levels you use will also dictate whether or not the sounds are too harsh for you. To be fully immersed, you need the audio to be at a reasonable level, and if you're fighting and you hear little baby sounds in the background as you hit enemies in a big fight, and you can hear yourself panting and moving around, then some of the immersion is lost. So you want to listen to the game at audio levels which make you convinced you are there, which means turning up the volume to a comfortable but impactful level. The speakers you use also play a big role in this as well, and some speakers tend to have a brighter sound to them, and some favor the lower frequency range, so it all depends. This can all be fixed by adjusting audio settings. This doesn't fix the abrasiveness of the audio track's high frequency sounds, but it does turn the volume down for those sounds, which is a reasonable compromise. But if this was my game, I would not want people to be forced to navigate menus to turn down volume just so their ears aren't ringing by the time they're finished playing this game. Some people may not even realize they can adjust the volume slider in the menu, and they may have a bad experience due to this. The levels are small, and I do wish they were bigger, much bigger, so that you felt a sense of accomplishment pushing through them. With levels being so short, you have no sense of accomplishment for enduring a long level. But I guess this is just part of the roguelite feature set. You go into a dungeon, get as far as you can, and then inevitably you die, bringing your gathered powers back home to rebuild and get stronger, only to tackle the dungeon again to see if you can get further the next time. There's definitely not enough variety and randomness to this game. Let's roll up my sleeves for this one. The enemies are fantastic when you first encounter them, but then they start to become a little bit tedious and uninteresting. The weapons and upgrading system is good, but I wish there were more ways to customize your loadout. I don't know, I feel like a class-based system would be interesting and would definitely keep more entertained in the long run. Maybe we will see this with further updates or a second title, who knows. The feeling of weight on weapons is a bit of a disappointment, as usual with weighted weapons in VR titles. As I said before, the sense of weight in VR titles just doesn't make sense with weapons. Whether it's a heavy shotgun or a heavy axe or sword, adding weight to it only breaks immersion and does not add to the fun factor of any VR title. I understand the idea behind it, and if you roleplay just right, you might be able to convince yourself that you're carrying a heavy weapon as it slugs when you swing your arm forward in a slow motion fashion, but it just doesn't do it for me. If a developer thinks it's a good idea to add weight to melee weapons or guns, then they need to seriously rethink their game design. VR is still in its infancy stages, and developers are exploring and experimenting with new ideas, but weighted weapons in VR needs to go. It doesn't add anything to the immersion, and does not add to gameplay value. If anything, it breaks immersion, which is why I fail to understand why it's still implemented in VR titles like The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, and Until You Fall. If you take Half-Life Alyx as an example, they did two things which The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners and Until You Fall did not do. Those two things are removing weight from weapons and not showing your arms and body. The developers did not add these things because they recognize it does not add any value to the experience for the gamer. And the more foreign objects you have in the game, the less immersed you become. If I look down at my arms of what I think they should look like, and it doesn't quite match, it's going to break my immersion. Sure, over time, you may get used to these foreign objects in VR, but why would a developer put them there in the first place if they do not serve a real purpose, and it only takes away from your immersion? So the same goes for weighted weapons. If you have VR and you end up purchasing Until You Fall, then do me a favor and pick up a dagger and an axe, and swing them around. Which one feels better to swing? Spoiler, it's probably going to be the dagger, because it moves where you expect it to, because it's a lightweight weapon and doesn't carry any weight to it. If they did this with axes as well, the axes in Until You Fall would feel just as good, and it wouldn't break any immersion and only add to the gameplay. Now, I can understand the developers probably thought adding weight to weapons would add to immersion, but when you're in the middle of combat and you need to block an incoming attack, and you picked up your arm quickly to block the attack, only to be denied the block because the weapon had weight, which meant it was slugging behind, well, that just feels unnatural, and it doesn't add anything other than frustration. Lastly, one of the more recent updates kind of screwed over the index controls. The touch sensor on the right index controller is used to dash forwards and backwards. Now this is an issue because this is where most people rest their thumb, or at least I do. Well, because I rest my thumb there, I'm constantly touching the sensor and will randomly dash forwards or backwards. This can easily be fixed by editing your controller layout in the Steam VR menu, but again, this just adds to the details which the developers failed to recognize. It's an easy fix, but I should not have to fix the controller layout myself, and the developers should have thought this through before deciding on the layout of the index controllers. As a side note to all developers, nothing important or distracting should be mapped to the touch sensors on the controllers, especially the index controllers, because that's where it makes sense to rest your thumb from an ergonomic standpoint. The touch sensor actually has two features, a touch and a press feature. So maybe the developers meant to place dash when pressed and not touched. Either way, it's still a detail which was overlooked. Alright, but let's talk about what is good in this game and why I enjoy it. Until You Fall is a challenger to Beat Saber and other titles which give you a good workout. Unlike Beat Saber, where you can just stand in place and wave your arms through most songs, Until You Fall has you moving your entire body to dodge incoming attacks, and has you turning around to defend yourself from multiple enemies attacking at once. There is some strategy involved when fighting multiple enemies simultaneously, so this adds a bit of a mental exercise as well. Both games are great for cardio, and you should not choose one over the other. They complement each other well, and with both of them, you can have a more rounded workout experience. Mechanically, Until You Fall feels great, and hacking away at enemies almost feels as good as slicing blocks in Beat Saber. The game is very simple to understand, which means there is not much of a steep learning curve, and this makes it easy to enjoy for new VR owners. The weapons actually clash with each other and other objects. This adds to the immersion and can create moments where your weapons may be blocked by an object, as it would in real life. However, this does get confusing to me because they allow the weapons to go through your arms, which makes me wonder what their purpose was for clashing weapons in the first place. If they made a compromise so weapons don't get stuck on your arms or your body to enhance the experience, then why not make some compromises with the weight of weapons and remove it? That way, we can all have a more engaging and immersive experience. The theme which they chose is fantastic, and it fits well in every aspect. The retro neon artwork and synthwave style fighting music complement each other perfectly, and when the sound effects are not too harsh, they complement the soundtrack as well, as if the clashing of swords are part of the music when you're fighting. Until You Fall has been a game which I keep going back to, but it's not one which has completely stuck with me like Beat Saber has. This title is fantastic for the price and the gameplay is great, but it left me craving a little bit more. More enemies, more weapons, more environments, more upgrades, and more fighting styles such as different classes. But that may be me just being a little bit greedy. I think anyone who is interested in another workout title, a hack and slash game, or wants a roguelite style fighting game, you will not be disappointed either way. And if you want all three of those things, then Until You Fall will definitely tickle your pickle. Oh, also, it's more of a roguelite than a roguelike, so their Steam store page is a little bit misleading. Thank you everyone for checking out this video today. If you liked it, subscribing is the best way to show your support. Go ahead and like it in the comments. I mean, the thumbs up button. The like. Comment too, though. Comment too, but hit all the shit. Hit it all. Make sure you subscribe to me on Twitch as well, because I stream there also. So I'm probably streaming like now, so like maybe check now, and I might be streaming and then we could talk. And as always, make sure you think for yourself, which means question yourself, do what makes you happy, and I'll see you all next time. If you liked the video,
pursue it deeper into the forest before it can recover. Absorb the bloom and continue, champion.